Have you tried breathing? Maybe counting to 10? Maybe you should just drink more water and go ground yourself. Have you tried journaling about it? Did you know that you can clear your throat chakra? Maybe you should stretch it out. Don't forget to regulate. But what if this focus on regulation is just a prettier way of saying shut the fuck up? What if calmness is just a form of compliance with a big pink pretty bow attached to it? We've been told, or at least I've been told in the healing world and in the spirituality world, that if you can control your emotions, that is the highest form of self-mastery. That if you can stay calm no matter what, even in the face of cruelty, injustice, betrayal, abuse, femicide, genocide, the rise of fascism, just to give a few examples. If you can stay calm in those situations, then you are powerful. But no one ever asks why the expectation is that we should even stay calm at all. Why is serenity the goal when the world keeps lighting itself on fire? Are we not supposed to react at all? Our nervous systems are not broken. They are responding brilliantly and appropriately to a pretty fucked up world. So today we're going to do a deep dive on feminine rage. What happens when it's silenced? Why it's so often pathologized? And how reclaiming it might just be the most radical form of healing that we have access to. In a 2015 study, researchers Jessica Salerno and Liana Peter Haig explored how expressions of anger affected perceived credibility and influence based on gender. So basically they had a group of undergraduate students who believed that they were part of a computer-mediated mock jury deliberation about a murder case. Obviously this is all just for research. Nobody actually died. But basically they had women and men expressing anger, trying to get their point across to the jury. The study found that anger expression enhances perceived credibility and influence for men, but undermines it for women. This disparity is attributed to social stereotypes where male anger is often seen as a justified response to external situations, while female anger is perceived as a result of internal emotional instability. These findings have broader implications beyond jury deliberations. In professional social settings, women expressing anger may be unfairly judged as less competent or overly emotional. In May 2014, in Georgia South University, the study found that participants rated angry male attorneys highest in competence, while angry female attorneys were rated the lowest. Additionally, the male attorney's anger was more likely attributed to the situation, whereas the female attorney's anger was attributed to a personal disposition. Further analysis of Sonero's work emphasized that angry male attorneys were seen as passionate and powerful, while angry female attorneys were labelled as shrill or obnoxious. This bias persisted even when the attorneys delivered the exact same arguments with almost identical displays of anger. So I just wanted to read out a few of those studies just to show the double standards of how we are socialized differently, how men and women are socialized to be different. When a man displays anger or loses his temper or shouts or whatever, he is perceived as gaining control of a situation. When a woman loses her temper or gets angry or displays or expresses anger, she is seen and perceived as losing control. This double standard actually begins before puberty. According to sociologist Carol Gilligan, girls are taught early to prioritize relational harmony, to be nice, to be likable, to be palatable, but not necessarily to express their honest, genuine feelings about something because it might not make other people happy. Emotional self-censorship is treated as emotional intelligence. Boys, on the other hand, are allowed and even encouraged to express anger. In fact, anger is often seen as a sign of strength, leadership, and passion. He's just being protective. He just really, really cares. Whereas when a woman is displaying anger, she needs to calm down and she's too emotional or she's hysterical. The American Psychological Association reports that by adolescence, boys are more likely to externalize emotions, so they express their anger, while girls are taught to internalize, leading to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and self-blame in girls by the age of 14. Social scientist Dr. Niobe Way found that many boys are encouraged to externalize anger as power, while girls are socialized to maintain harmony, often through emotional suppression. By adolescence, girls are already experts in emotional editing. They've learned how to anticipate how other people might feel and to modify themselves accordingly. This is not empathy. This is emotional labor and emotional suppression. The issue isn't with anger itself. The people displaying anger or people expressing anger isn't a bad thing, especially when it's appropriate and justified. The issue is who gets to express it without being punished, who has permission to express anger without being called a psycho or without being called hysterical. Anger is not inherently a male trait. It's not unspiritual, and it isn't a sign of immaturity. It is a biological emotion. It is a response to injustice, mistreatment, violation, betrayal. And women feel it just as strongly as men do. But instead of expressing it, we are taught to swallow it, to smile through it, to rationalize it and keep it inside. But when we do keep it inside and we don't actually allow ourselves, or we haven't been allowed to express it, the body holds onto it. It doesn't disappear, and it leaks out as illness or resentment, or maybe one day we'll actually lose our shit because we've been poked and poked and poked too many times without ever letting it out. Not everything that makes you angry, not everything that triggers you is a wound that needs to be healed. Sometimes it's a signal. It is a signal from your body saying this is absolute bullshit. Don't be reactive. You're just being really triggered. That's your trauma speaking. Maybe you've heard these phrases. I definitely have heard these and similar phrases like this in the wellness world, in the spiritual world, in like the healing therapy world or whatever. And they sound like they're coming from a good place. It sounds nice. Like, yeah, that's my trauma speaking. I'm just really triggered. I just need to like work on my emotional reactivity. I just need to work on not being triggered. And I just need to breathe through this trigger that I'm feeling. But often it is just like spiritual gaslighting and spiritual bypassing, and a lot of people, and I don't think it's done in like a malicious way. I'm not trying to like point the finger at people who are in the like nervous system regulation world or in the healing world and be like, they're evil, they're trying to silence us, they're trying to oppress us, they're trying to get us to choke on our anger instead of expressing it. And I don't think people are maliciously doing that, or maybe they are, I don't really know. But a lot of this bypassing is trying to reframe our most honest, embodied response to forms of injustice. Okay, if our bodies are reacting to witnessing major injustice, major mistreatment or abuse in a really kind of fucked up world under really fucked up systems that are not really designed for our benefit, our bodies are reacting to that. And we're being told by the healing world or by the spirituality world to just like regulate and to calm down and to always be prioritizing this sense of calm. So suddenly we become the problem. Not the systems that we live under, not witnessing what we're witnessing, not experiencing what we're experiencing, not being abused in relationships. That's not the problem. We become the problem. This regulation becomes like a spiritual gag order. Maybe you are not dysregulated because you haven't healed enough. Maybe you are dysregulated because you are just paying attention and you can see what I can see. Maybe your body is not fucked up. Maybe your body is absolutely amazing and it's working perfectly and it's working brilliantly. Maybe you are seeing videos of children being pulled from the rubble in Gaza. Maybe you are seeing videos of children being starved. Maybe you are watching videos of police brutalize protesters while politicians do absolutely fucking nothing. Maybe you are getting spoken over constantly at meetings at work. Maybe you are listening to men in your life excuse misogyny as a difference of opinion, or they're just playing devil's advocate. And your body will react to this. Your body will feel dysregulated. Your heart might thump, you might get anxiety, your stomach might do flips, your skin might break out, you might be clenching your jaw, your sleep might be suffering, you might feel rage in your throat, in your chest. And this is not a flaw. This is not a sign that you are broken. This is not a failure. This is intelligence, and this is your body saying like, none of this is okay. everything that I'm experiencing, everything that I'm witnessing is not okay. Doing nervous system regulation work and doing healing work and somatic work is not just about learning how to calm down. It's about learning how to listen and honor what your body is signaling to you. And sometimes the body is, screaming for a really, really good reason. And we're not doing our body justice by trying to shut it up and silence it into a state of submission and compliance. As somatic abolitionist Resmaa Menakem writes in My Grandmother's Hands, our culture has trained us to treat trauma as a personal problem, to be fixed in isolation. But trauma is political and it lives in the collective body. In other words, your dysregulation may not be a sign that your body is broken. It may be a sign that the world is broken and your body is just reacting to it. And I just want to ask the question, who will benefit from a society where women are forced to always silence themselves and be compliant and be submissive and never, ever, ever let someone know that they pissed us off? Who will benefit from that? Because it won't be us, it won't be women. If anger is not allowed, if justified anger and appropriate anger is not allowed, then accountability will never be required. If women can be convinced that every emotional surge that they feel, every emotional trigger or every sense of anger that they feel is a personal failure, then systems that harm us get to go unchecked. This is not healing. This is just self-policing. There's a lot of focus as well on always down-regulating. Like in the nervous system regulation world, I see so much focus on down-regulating, going from a state of activation back into a state of calm. And for a lot of people, women, women who are more prone to a fawn or a freeze type of nervous system response, you actually need to up-regulate. And the most regulating thing that you can do in those situations, if you are more prone to a fawn or a freeze, which most women are, is actually to get angry, is actually to activate and lean into that activation and express it outwards and tell people that they pissed you off, tell people that they can't treat you that way, tell people to leave you alone and to get away from you. That is nervous system regulation. If you are prone to fawning or freezing and you are constantly trying to calm down even more, that is not regulation. That is not regulation at all. That is not helpful. That is not what you need at all. And I only ever see people talking about down regulating and calming down. Think about up-regulating as well. That's also regulation. Somatic psychologist Stacey K. Haynes warns that regulation must always be tied to power and context. Regulation is not about disconnecting from anger. It's about having a choice, not just in your body, but in your relationships, in your workspace, and in your culture. But mainstream wellness culture, regulation is often stripped from all politics. It becomes about being nice, being palatable, playing small, and playing it safe. So we end up doing breathwork sessions to try and forgive people who have not even been held accountable, who have not even apologized. When we are always trying to reduce healing to being polite or being palatable and not being disruptive and not being a fucking bitch, we strip the healing work that we're doing of so much of its power. Regulation is not the opposite of anger. Regulation is what allows us to channel that anger into action. Does that make sense? And sometimes being emotionally stoic or emotionally calm or regulated is not healing at all. It is not what we need in any way, shape, or form. Rage is absolutely a form of regulation. What if it is the body's clearest signal that you are finally in contact with what is real for you? What is pissing you off? What is actually causing you this trauma, or what is actually causing you to repeat these patterns? And when I'm talking about rage, I'm not obviously just saying absolutely go batshit crazy, lose your shit and just fuck up everything and be violent or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm literally, when I'm talking about rage, I'm talking about telling people to leave you alone, telling people if they've pissed you off, letting people know that they've hurt you, cutting people off, setting boundaries, going to protests if you want to, if that's your thing, and doing something with that doing something with that rage, doing something with that activation, instead of constantly just trying to breathe it out of our systems and calm down all the time. Okay, so it isn't about being absolutely out of control and having like outbursts. It's about righteous anger as somatic intelligence. It's about listening to our bodies when our bodies are signaling to us that this is fucked up, this is wrong, and not trying to gaslight our bodies into being calm. And just listening to that wisdom, listening to that somatic intelligence and honoring it, paying attention to it, leaning into it, and then taking action and doing something with it. So we're actually going to talk now about the medical cost of silenced rage, the medical cost of oppressing ourselves and suppressing ourselves into silence. So when you feel anger, when your body is giving you all these signals, all this activation that like, hey, a boundary has been crossed, someone's pissed me off, I'm not happy, I'm witnessing something that's so unjust and so unfair, and you don't express it. That suppressed anger does not just disappear. It doesn't go away. It doesn't evaporate just because you've journaled about it, or just because you've drank more water, or just because you started doing a visual meditation. Those things can help, yes. And I'm not trying to dismiss like the healing world as a whole. I think the healing, the down regulation, the really calm nervous system regulation tools, such as going for a walk, journaling, meditating, yoga, all of that stuff that brings us down, that is all very, very, very helpful. You can't stay up all the time. You can't be angry and like expressing anger 24/7. There has to be a balance, but it can't be all just down regulation. It cannot be all just focused on always being calm, always being serene, always being angelic. No. There has to be a balance. We have to learn how to upregulate and also downregulate as well. But again, there's way too much focus on downregulation. In my humble opinion, when we swallow our rage, the body will hold onto it. Over time, that rage becomes chronic. It becomes inflammation. It becomes disease. And then for millions of women around the world, it becomes a diagnosis. So autoimmune conditions, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, these things it's not a coincidence that it's mostly women that suffer from these diseases. They are a physical toll of a life spent self-abandoning, people-pleasing and self-silencing, because we've been conditioned, as we spoke about before, to swallow our rage and to be palatable and nice. Okay, so when we repress our anger, we disarm our immune system. That is a quote from Gabor Mate from his book, When the Body Says No. Mate argues that chronic repression of anger, especially when driven by early trauma or social conditioning, creates internal stress that dysregulates the body's natural immune defenses. Over time, this can contribute to the development of autoimmune diseases, cancers, and other chronic conditions. Another quote from that book: people who are unable to say no, who take on other people's problems as their own, who are compulsive caregivers, and who habitually suppress their anger are at greater risk of autoimmune disease. Mate explains that anger is not the problem. Repressed anger is. Anger itself is healthy and it's a necessary part of like boundary setting emotion. But when it's chronically suppressed, especially under social pressure to be nice and palatable and good and calm, it leads to long-term activation of the stress response. So increased cortisol, which is the stress hormone, decreased immune surveillance, and higher levels of inflammation. He says emotional repression is a major risk factor in the development of chronic illness. The repression of negative emotion, particularly anger, is a learned coping style that contributes to illness. So 80% of people with autoimmune diseases are women. That's over 50 million people in the US alone affected by diseases like Hashimoto's, lupus, MS, and rheumatoid arthritis. In a 2005 study from the Journal of Psychosomatic Research found that emotional suppression, particularly anger, was significantly associated with increased autoimmune symptoms and disease severity. A 2018 study in Frontiers in Psychology highlighted that women with autoimmune conditions were more likely to report over-adaptation, perfectionism, and emotional self-silencing in relationships, especially with authority figures or partners. And I just wanted to say as well that women of colour not only face the challenges that white women face, they also face much harsher levels of stereotypes, such as the angry black woman trope. This is even more pressure for black women to suppress their legitimate emotions and to avoid negative labeling. This compounded emotional labor can exacerbate health disparities, leading to higher incidences of autoimmune diseases in these communities. So this is something that Gabor Mate says about women. In our society, women are more likely to suppress their anger. They've been conditioned to take on emotional labor, to be caretakers, to prioritize others, and that emotional suppression exacts a price on the body. So what happens when anger is repressed over the course of a woman's lifetime? Chronic inflammation, higher incidences of autoimmune diseases, increased risk of cancer, particularly breast cancer, greater likelihood of fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndromes, and increased anxiety, depression, and overall disconnection from the body. So what is the answer to this? How do we move away from this conditioning? How do we move away from putting ourselves in danger and increasing our risk of all of these diseases just so we can appear more compliant and palatable? Embodied rage, not uncontrolled, destructive, emotional reactivity, but truthful, honest, authentic, boundaried expression is the answer. So we will talk about that in our last chapter. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about embodied rage and like, what does that actually look like? What does that actually mean? So when I talk about embodied rage, I'm talking about bringing it up and bringing it out. Okay, so what I already spoke about the nervous system regulation world and how there's an over focus on down regulation. In my opinion, there's an over focus on down regulation when a lot of the times we should be teaching people bringing that activation up, bringing those feelings up and expressing them outwards. And then after you do that, you can come back to a like down regulated state or whatever. But in my opinion, that can be done. You can express that rage, bringing it up, bringing it out without burning your life to the ground and without violence or without Tasmanian devil kind of outburst, if you get me. You can, it's also not like a performative anger where you're like reacting for the sake of reacting. It's a very clear and it's a very internal knowing that this is wrong. What I'm witnessing is wrong. What I'm experiencing is wrong. And the way that I'm feeling is completely justified. And when that feeling starts to rise inside your body, that feeling of anger, that feeling of frustration, whatever it is, not to just keep stomping it down and damping it down, which is what a lot of people are conditioned to do. And is what we normally always do anyway. Bring it up and express it out. Okay? So how that looks for everyone is going to be different. And it's so funny as well, because when I'm talking about like embodied rage, it's like she's in her villain era. And it's literally just sometimes saying to people, can you stop talking to me like that? Can you stop being such a dick? Can you just, if someone is disrespecting us or if someone is stepping on our toes or interrupting us, just literally like getting that feeling of anger, bringing it up and bringing it out into the conversation. I wasn't finished talking yet, or you're being quite rude, you're being quite disrespectful. She's in her villain era. Like it's not this huge giant magic display of crazy outbursts like psycho bitch behavior. It's literally just can you stop being mean to me, please? But anyway, so what it looks like is completely different for everyone. But how I would start if I was on my rage journey and if anything that I said resonated with you, or if you recognize any parts of yourself or your social conditioning or whatever, if you recognize that in any of the stuff that I've spoken about earlier, and you want to start learning how to express rage in a healthy way, bring it up and bring it out. As soon as you feel the rage in your body, like honor it and understand that it's a signal from your body. It isn't a sign that there's something wrong with you. It isn't a sign that you are unhealed or that you need to go calm down. It is a sign that something is wrong and that your body is letting you know that this is wrong. I'm witnessing something, I'm experiencing something, and the anger that I'm feeling is appropriate and it needs to be honored. So sitting with it, honoring it, and bringing it up and bringing it out. So another form of embodied rage is to share the rage with people who are able to hold it with us. So I am lucky. I have multiple people in my life who I can send 5-minute voice notes, 10-minute voice notes, sometimes 45-minute voice note too. I have people in my life who I can say, hey, this thing is pissing me off and I need to put that anger somewhere. Do you have space for this? Can I give you this? Sometimes I don't ask, do you have space for this? Because I know that my messages are welcome, but it's a good practice to always make sure that like people have space for it and we're not just like, bleh. But to be honest, 99% of the rage that I have felt, the anger that I have felt over the last year and a half has been to do with the ongoing genocide against the Palestinians. That has woken up a rage inside me that I didn't even know was possible, and not knowing what to do with that a lot of the times is it's really hard to, it's really, yeah, anyway, blah blah blah, it's not about me, but like that rage that I'm feeling, that sense of injustice, that sense of frustration, I'm so lucky that I have friends who can hold that for me. I'm so lucky that I have friends who feel the same way as me. So I get to send them a voice note or see them in person, give them hugs, and we get to get it out of our system, bring it up, and we get to bring it out. We get to share it with each other. So if you are lucky enough to have friends who you can vent to, you can practice that, bringing it up and bringing it out. That is embodied rage, pretty much. That's pretty much it. It's a lot easier to do that with friends than it is to do that like out in the wild or in work or sometimes even with our families. Sometimes it's a lot easier to be like, you know what's pissing me off? You know what's pissing me the fuck off? We can share that with our friends because they're our friends, but it's not as easy to kind of bring that energy into other situations, but we need to, or we will inevitably suffer as we get older. So it's a good practice to, you know, practice that with friends, and people that we trust and people that we know will also probably be able to hold it and feel the same way that we do. If you don't have friends and you don't have a space where you can hand that over to or share that, co-regulate with other people, or like share that heaviness with or that anger with, look for groups online. I know so many people are so dismissive of like social media or whatever, and I get it, yeah, but whatever. Social media is an amazing place as well if it's used correctly. Like social media is a tool, in my opinion, and it depends what you do with that tool that determines whether it's beneficial or harmful. Like a knife. You could use a knife to peel an apple, or you could use a knife to stab someone in the face. The knife isn't the problem. It's what you do with the knife. So I feel the same with social media. If you're using social media in a certain way that's damaging or, you know, bad, then obviously it isn't going to be very, very beneficial. But if you're using social media, you know, in decent ways, it can be very beneficial, like finding communities and stuff. So I would look for communities. If you're like me, look for a community where you can do something to help the Palestinians. Look for a community where you could go and offer help. You could volunteer, and there will be people there who can probably hold your anger and co-regulate with you. There will be people there who, you know, before you even go there, you know that they feel the same way that you do. They know that you are dysregulated. They know that you're upset. You can express that to them, bring it up and bring it out. And chances are those people, if they're there too, will feel the same way that you do. If it's something else in your life that is causing you anger, if it's seeing what's happening in America, maybe you're listening to this, loads of people that listen to this are actually in America, so maybe you are concerned about the absolute state of your country, and I don't fucking blame you, but get together, there are so many groups, there are so many organizations of people who are banding together. Find a group who are working towards the same thing that you want to be working towards, who are angry at the same things that you are angry at, who are witnessing the same things that you are witnessing. Those people could absolutely hold your anger and resonate with you and attune to you and co-regulate with you. There are people out there who are safe to bring it up and to bring it out. So, or maybe it's a feminist group. Maybe if you are witnessing the rise of the femicide, the rise of the misogynistic content online, the red pill content, and that is alarming to you, join a feminist group. And there will be people there who will be able to hold you while you bring it up and you bring it out. Okay? So learning as well that our rage is sacred. It is a compass. It is a portal to our healing. And we have been conditioned to think that our rage or our anger is somehow interrupting our healing. It's somehow halting it, or it's like we're taking steps backwards if we are getting angry, because again, we're like conditioned to always try and be calm, and there's this over prioritization of calmness and serenity and like whatever. But like, your rage is not an interruption to your healing. It is the portal to it. So I will leave you on that note. Thank you for being here, and I will see you next week for the next episode.